brutal murder leads the detective to uncover a mystery in his own police department. Welcome back to Movies Explained. Today's film is a crime mystery from 2023 titled Reptile. The movie opens with a young couple, Will Grady and Summer Elswick, cleaning up an old house on Whitcomb Street. They are property realtors preparing the house to be sold. Will tries to be playfully intimate with Summer, but she is not in the mood. Later, Summer tells her friend about a nightmare she had, and her friend suggests that Summer may be subconsciously afraid of getting caught with something. That night, Will prepares for an event with the help of his mother, Camille. Will is the head of a property realtor company that his family has run for many years, and they are hosting an event tonight. When Will comes home, he is disappointed with Summer for not attending the event with him. The next day, while Will is running errands, Summer returns to Whitcomb to clean up some more. She receives a call and is on her phone when the doorbell rings, notifying someone has entered from the front door. She tells them that she's in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Will is still outside and he can't reach Summer's phone. He stops by and enters the dark old house. When he comes upstairs, he is shocked to find Summer's body lying bloodied on the floor. Somewhere in town, a group of people can be seen gathering at a bar. A middle-aged couple, Tom and Judy Nichols, join their friends at the bar as they celebrate Judy's uncle and their co-worker, Robert Allen's planned retirement. They all work for the Scarborough Police Department, and they seem to be very close with one another. Robert excuses himself to take a call, and Tom notices that something is wrong. It turns out that they were called to the murder scene at Whitcomb. They are joined by another officer, Dan Cleary, as they investigate the body. The murderer had left the murder knife inside Summer's body since they stabbed her too hard. Then, Tom and Dan question a neighbor who witnessed a car pulling into the house's driveway and a man entering the house. A crowd is forming outside the house, and a suspicious-looking man is among them. Back at the station, Tom starts questioning Will about his relationship with Summer and if anything happened before her death. Will implies that he loved her from the first time they met, and that they only had a minor argument the night before her murder. Will also reveals that Summer is still technically married to her estranged husband. Afterward, they take his DNA and fingerprints before Robert urges Tom to let Will go. The next day, they hold a press conference where Robert convinces Chief Marty Graber that Tom is the best detective to lead the case. Again, the suspicious man joins the crowd to witness the press conference. Later in the morgue, the coroner explains that there are 33 stab wounds on Summer's body, and there are indications of sexual intercourse before her death. Her hands were also bound by a rope, but they couldn't find any fingerprints or bruises below her waist. Blonde hair was found on her body, and there was a red paint streak on her hand. The coroner says it's an old paint that hasn't been produced for some time. Then, they watch a security tape that shows the car that was parked at the house before the murder. They rule it out as a Buick LeSabre that is missing a front hubcap. Tom and Dan then go to Will's house where they search for more clues. Tom finds a picture of Summer with her ex-husband and asks Will if he can borrow it. Interviewing Summer's friend leads nowhere either, as she doesn't know the ex-husband or anyone who would hurt Summer. After witnessing security footage of Summer's ex-husband, Dan and Tom go to his house. The ex-husband, Sam Gifford, initially cooperates with their questioning, positing his alibi that he was out fishing by the lake from the day Summer was murdered until last night. However, when Dan notices some red paint on Sam's hand, Sam becomes agitated and requests a lawyer if the detectives want to question him further. That night, Tom and Judy are dancing at a Southern-style gathering. The other officers are also there with their wives, and one detective named Wally is handing out keychains to promote his new private security company. The investigation continues with Tom returning to the Grady's house to ask Will and his mother about Summer's work as a realtor. He asks why she wasn't being paid her commissions, but Camille explains that it goes directly to an investment property for her family that's worth around $70,000. Dan thinks it can be a motive for Sam to kill her so he can get the house. But Tom isn't sure. Meanwhile, as Judy walks with her friends, she tells them that they moved from Philadelphia because Tom was getting harassed by his detective partner, who was being investigated for multiple crimes. That night, Will gets a visit from the suspicious man who claims that they know each other. When Will tries to close the door, the man taunts him before ultimately leaving. At the station, Dan finds out that Summer visited a property that she sold more than a year ago, the night before her murder. Tom visits the place to find that it's a small church, and he finds the source of the red paint found on Summer's hand. Tom questions the church's keeper, but he doesn't seem to know anything related to the case. Feeling stuck, Tom goes to Judy for more info on the suspect's car. She says that it's not a Buick, but a purple Chrysler Imperial, the same one she used to drive years ago. After Summer's funeral, Will approaches Tom, who is parked outside, to mention that the suspicious man had come to his home and threatened his family. The man is actually the son of a farmer whose farm was bought by Will's company years ago, and he harbors revenge for Will's family because his father killed himself after the sale. Tom says there's nothing they can do, but tells Will to call him if the man ever comes to their house again. Later, Tom and Dan come to the mysterious man's house, whose name is Eli Phillips. They ask him why he's so interested in the case, and it's because he thinks Will murdered Summer, and he wants to see Will being arrested. After warning Eli that he will be arrested if he comes to the Grady's house again, the detectives leave the house. At the station, they receive information that Summer once called the FBI about wanting to report narcotics activity, but she didn't follow up with the DEA. They continue discussing the case with the other officers in Tom's backyard. Dan starts a bet on which suspect's DNA will match the semen they found on Summer's body. They find out that the blonde hair belongs to Summer's friend, so they question her again. This time she admits that she knows about Summer and her ex-husband still being in a casual relationship when she was murdered. When recounting the night of the murder with Will, Robert receives a call that seems to have confirmed the DNA match is Sam. Tom, Dan, and some supporting officers rush to Sam's house to arrest him. Dan escorts Sam to the toilet, while Tom looks around the house, but then gunshots are heard after Dan's gun gets stolen by Sam. Sam shoots at Tom and Tom shoots back, but Sam manages to escape through a window. Outside, the officers instruct Tom on Sam's whereabouts, but when Tom approaches him from the back, he realizes that Sam is dead from a gunshot wound. The rest of the team arrive at the scene and they find a stash of drugs that Sam was trafficking. On one of the packages, Wally puts on a patterned tape to seal a hole made by a bullet from earlier. To file the proper report, they must take Tom's gun and put him on temporary suspension until the report is cleared. Meanwhile, Will is drinking at a bar when he meets a beautiful young lady who wants to become a property realtor. Sometime later, Tom wakes up in a cold sweat and reads the newspaper about Sam's death, which indicates that he is Summer's killer. He discusses the article with Judy, irritated that the story doesn't seem to fit with all the leads they've investigated. After a prerequisite session with a therapist, Tom is deemed fit to go back on the field, and he is warmly welcomed back by his co-workers. Later, at a house party hosted by Wally, Wally urges Tom to join his private security company once Tom is tired of being a cop to earn some easy money. He also offers to set Tom up with some girls at the party, but Tom is faithful to Judy. Then, Robert gives Tom good news that he and the chief will recommend him for a Medal of Valor for saving Dan's life during the arrest. But Tom doesn't seem excited to hear that. Not satisfied by the case's verdict, Tom finds another lead from the bite marks on Summer's hand. He reports this to Robert and requests a dental sample taken from Sam's dead body, but it turns out the bite marks are too shallow to form a solid conclusion. Robert asks if Tom is still unsatisfied with the case's conclusion, but Tom says he doesn't mind if they close the case now. One evening, Eli is watching the news about a car crash that resulted in a man being arrested for drug trafficking. He notices that the man works for Will's company. Meanwhile, Tom also watches the same news report and spots one of the drug packages having the same patterned tape as the one they confiscated from Sam's house. Later that night, when Tom is dealing with a break-in at the Grady's house, Judy is wakened up by some sounds from outside their house. Tom arrives home to find Eli crouching in their backyard as Judy aims a gun at him. After Tom handcuffs him, Eli says that Summer has been ripped off by a company called White Fish, and he wants Tom to investigate further into it, and also at a man named Rudy who was in the news earlier. Then, Eli gets arrested, but Tom notices a USB drive that he left on the chair. The drive contains information about the houses that Summer has sold. They are all houses that have been seized through civil asset forfeiture by the police before being bought by a company named Whitefish. Tom is now compelled to investigate further on his own. He finds a house that had just been seized, and when he visits it, he finds the Grady real estate for sale signs already prepared at the property. Tom gets help from an officer named Jimmy, who finds out that Whitefish isn't active anymore and what's left of it is just one P.O. box. However, another company now uses the same mailbox, and it turns out to be Wally's private security company. To confirm his suspicions further, he finds out that the drug evidence from Sam's house had been put into disposal on the same day that Rudy got caught with the same packaged drugs. This leads him to call Jimmy again to ask for Rudy's phone records. That evening, Eli's bail is mysteriously paid out and he returns home, only to find Will sneaking inside later. Will wants Eli to return what he has taken from his house before the arrest, which we can assume is the data inside the USB drive. When Eli refuses, another man that we can't see comes inside the house. In the station, tension rises for Tom as he starts to uncover the corruption within the department. When he comes by Eli's house later, the place is empty and he finds a bottle of bleach, implying that Eli was killed. Tom and Judy eat at a restaurant that night, but he doesn't have any appetite. Judy notices her husband acting weird, but he won't tell her much yet. Then they spot Will and his family coming in for a meal along with the girl that Will met at the bar earlier. Tom decides to come to their table and greet Will. Then they are seen touring the house that Tom had investigated. When they enter a bedroom, Tom calls the number that he got from checking Rudy's call history, and Will's phone starts ringing. Suddenly, Will shoots Tom in the stomach and then aims for the head before Tom wakes up, realizing that it's just a nightmare. The next day, Tom and Judy come to the Allens' lakeside house to celebrate Robert's birthday. Naturally, Tom is acting cold and standoffish, which is mentioned by Wally as he confronts Tom. Then Robert takes Tom to his study to say that Tom has been granted the Medal of Valor. But of course, Tom doesn't feel happy to receive it. Later, when everyone is still celebrating, Tom heads to the garage to grab a beer, but gets interested in the car stored there under a hood. It's a white Chrysler Imperial, and after checking the hood to confirm that the original color is purple just like the killer's car, Robert catches him doing it. Robert knows that Tom has figured out the corrupt scheme and urges him to let go of the case. After coming home, Tom finally tells Judy all about the corruption scheme. Wally plants drugs to get the houses seized before Will buys them as Whitefish. Summer was their broker, and they killed her because she was planning to speak up about the scheme. Tom thinks that Robert is either part of the scheme or helping them before he receives a call from the man himself. Robert wants to talk about this issue tomorrow morning at his house, and Tom agrees. To Wally, Robert says that everything will be fine since he thinks Tom will shut his mouth just like he did back in his old department. Before Tom comes into Robert's house in the morning, he reveals everything to Chief Graber, who follows him inside the house. Robert wants them to talk upstairs, but Graber says he needs to go to the toilet first. Robert uses this chance to warn Tom to leave, because Graber is also in on the scheme and they're going to kill him. But when Robert comes up the stairs, he is shot in the head by Wally. Tom then aims his gun at Graber and pulls the trigger when he sees the chief reaching for his gun. The only person left is Wally, and they get into a shootout. While only Tom's hand gets injured, Wally is shot in the stomach. He wants Tom to shoot him dead and finish it, but he calls 911 instead. The movie ends with Tom finally back to his peaceful life with Judy. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos.